Chapter 3, Fear was the pastor who preached the loudest. Fear didn't just speak my language, it made sure I never learned another. The thoughts of my childhood. After my mom finished school, she moved us back home to Colorado and to our old church. Even though they had divorced just 2 years earlier, my parents decided to remarry. But our senior pastor, a man whose rigid morality often masked a lack of grace, flatly refused to perform the ceremony. In his self-righteousness, he couldn't imagine offering forgiveness to a couple he deemed tarnished by the shame of divorce. And yet, in an ironic display of spiritual loophole making, he allowed one of his assistant ministers to quietly officiate the awkward ceremony in a cramped office at the church. As if mercy could only be granted in secret. It wasn't a celebration, it was a concession. A moment steeped more in silent judgment than joy. An emblem of the oppressive legalism that had long defined the faith we were raised in. I was entering my teenage years, just as the world was exploding with noise. Cable TV, the first shaky steps of the internet, CD players replacing tapes, and cell phones suddenly shrinking the distance between everything. It felt like the future had shown up overnight. Flashing lights, static, and temptations I wasn't ready for. And there I was, a teenage boy stuck in a house that preached one thing on Sundays and lived something entirely different the rest of the week. Church told me to fear the world. The world told me church was a joke. And me? I was caught in the crossfire. No map, no anchor. Just voices pulling me in opposite directions, loud, relentless, and none of them sounding like safety. And underneath all that noise was a deeper kind of silence, the kind that crept in when no one was watching. My dad was still drinking, still disappearing in plain sight, his pain leaking out in slurred words and broken promises. My older brother was beginning to crack in ways I didn't have the language for yet. Pulling away, acting out, his rebellion sharp-edged and erratic, hinting at something darker we didn't yet understand. And me? I was starting to feel the slow, heavy pull of something I couldn't name. A numbness, a sadness, a dread that clung to my chest like it belonged there. I didn't know it then, but I was slipping into depression. I just thought I was weak, or maybe broken. Or maybe God was punishing me for not being strong enough to hold my family together. Fear wasn't just in the world outside anymore. It was in my blood. At the same time, I started to see behind the curtain of church life, the part no one ever talked about from the pulpit. The men who preached fire on Sundays were the same ones whispering secrets in hallways and breaking the rules they swore were holy. I was young, but not blind. Some of the youth leaders, barely a few years older than us, were the ones who told us to be pure, to stay separate from the world. But they were living double lives. There were rumors at first, then confirmations, drugs, hookups, parties behind closed doors. They preached against sin with trembling voices, but it wasn't conviction, it was deflection. Their sermons were often just distractions from their own guilt. What made it worse was the impossibility of the rules to begin with. No dating, no movies, no secular music, no short sleeves, no dancing, no joy that wasn't pre-approved. The standard was unbearable, and they couldn't even meet it themselves. But instead of admitting it, they hid, they performed, and they expected us to do the same. So I did. I learned to fake it, to raise my hands at the right time, to cry on cue, to speak the language of repentance, without ever being sure I believed any of it. I couldn't trust the world. I couldn't trust the church. I couldn't trust the leaders who swore they had it all figured out. And somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to trust God too. Because if these were his people, if this was his system, then where did that leave me? And yet, even in the middle of all the fear and confusion, there were moments, real ones, that I still carry with a kind of quiet fondness. Camps and retreats where something beyond us stirred, where I genuinely felt what I can only describe as the supernatural brushing up against my life. There were late-night sleepovers filled with laughter that made you forget, at least for a while, how heavy everything else was. Pickup games of football and basketball that felt like oxygen. Friday night youth services that gave us a place to go, a rhythm to follow, a reason to stay out of trouble we barely even knew existed. It was a broken system. Yes, corrupt, controlling, steeped in contradiction. But we didn't know that then, not fully. We just knew it gave us something to belong to. And for a little while, that was enough. It's strange now, almost laughable, how we lived with such a split heart back then. Every summer, we'd board that old church bus like it was a ticket to freedom. We were hormone-fueled and half-wild, buzzing with anticipation, not for the altar calls or the worship sets, but for the chance to sit next to whoever we were dating that season. We'd sneak glances, sneak touches, let our hands wander beneath jackets under the false safety of night. Some brought flasks tucked into backpacks. Others passed joints behind cabin walls, trying to catch a high before the conviction set in. The first couple days of camp felt like a game. How much could we get away with before God caught up to us? But he always did. Somewhere between the second night's worship and the third day's sermon, something shifted. Not all at once, not with dramatic flair, but slowly, quietly. Guilt would creep in, not just guilt, but something deeper. Conviction, a longing to be clean, a sudden, aching awareness that maybe this God they kept talking about wasn't out to crush us, but to find us, to love us. And even if fear played a role, so did hope. So we threw out the weed. We poured the booze into the dirt behind the cabins. We stopped sneaking out and started staying up late to pray. We wrote our names on pledge cards, tears on our cheeks, trembling with sincerity. It wasn't pretend. It wasn't performance. It was young, scared, messy hearts trying, desperately, to believe that maybe we hadn't gone too far, that maybe God still wanted us. And for a little while, we believed he did.